Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a nice morning today. Welcome to today's webinar, Signal in the Noise. I'm Kseniya Kudasheva, Digital Footprint Intelligence Analyst at Kaspersky. And during the next 60 minutes, I'll share the key trends in Hacktivism 2025. Specifically, I'll explain how hashtags are used to coordinate and amplify attacks and share our key insights on hacktivist patterns 2025. Before we dive in and the hacktivist plans, how the data was collected and analyzed. Once you scan the QR code on the slides, it will take you directly to, you can find this exact report and quite more of useful information over there. Okay, so what's Digital Footprint Intelligence? DFI for short. DFI is multi-step threat analysis service. We start with external attack surface monitoring, where we evaluate your assets, scan for vulnerable services and associated vulnerabilities, for exposed services and associated vulnerabilities. Then we proceed our search and extend it to the surface, deep, and dark webs. There we search for mentions of your company, even implicit ones, data leaks, and any other signs of compromise. For example, compromises by botnets, info stealers, and any other kinds of malware. During our work process, we combine automation and expert manual review. Automation gives us scale when expert manual review adds accuracy. This way only we can achieve this giant number on the slides of daily processed data, as well as the large amount of satisfied and fortified customers. Okay, and we also release a lot of interesting reports, and we are often referenced by major news outlets. And by the way, I highly encourage you to check our latest reports. They're quite insightful. And by coincidence, today I'm sharing on one of such reports, Signal in the Noise. Let's briefly discuss what it's about. The purpose of this report and of today's webinar is to identify patterns in hacktivist activity. How do these groups operate? What methods do they use? How do they issue threats? And once a warning appears, how quickly an attack might follow? And as title suggests, what role hashtags play in all of this? This research was conducted from cyber perspective strictly and is based on principle of neutrality. Data presented during this webinar and the one presented in the report differ a bit one from each other, as the current data was added and updated by 4 months since August till November, as the research was based on data on 2025 till July. Okay, so let's discuss. We are done with disclaimers. Let's discuss the research itself. So For this research, we tracked hacktivism across online platforms with a particular focus on groups targeting countries in the Middle East. We analyzed over 14,000 posts published by over 120 hacktivist groups throughout 2025. And such data set represents roughly 20% of all captured hacktivist activity, which was also dated by 2025, it's important to say. And Telegram has become the most popular platform among hacktivists, as the prevalent dose of the publications was found there. So this research is about hacktivists in Telegram. But who are they? What is a hacktivist even? This term refers to, the word hacktivist derives from two words, hacker and activist. So hacktivist is the politically motivated threat actor who often value visibility over sophistication. Their tactics are designed for maximum visibility, reach, and ease of execution rather than sophistication or technical complexity. A hacktivist may also refer to either administrator of a community who launched the attack itself, or to an ordinary subscriber who simply participates in the launched attacks. As you look at the screenshot of the typical hacktivist message on the right part of the screen, I will share the key description of a hacktivist I would like you to take away from this presentation. And in that, hacktivists are loud, hacktivists are flashy, and they want to be seen. The good news is that security teams can exploit it against the hacktivists by applying proactive measures. Is there a way to still stay stealthy? To seek attention while keep your identity hidden? Yes, and this way is hashtag, one of the most persistent features of hacktivism, used in their posts frequently. Hashtags help to amplify messages, coordinate activity, and claim attack credits. You can see just a few of them on the slides, and trust me, there are way more. How many more? Well, at least 2,599 unique hashtags that were mentioned in 2025. And hopefully by the time of this webinar, they created at least one more so that it was easier to pronounce. And anyway, about 2,000 of these hashtags initially appeared in 2025, and we'll label these hashtags as new ones. Just let's remember this term as of now. And now let's take a look at the top 5 hashtags used in 2025. 4 of them, everything except the second, represent hacktivist group names. When the second one stands out, it represents the name of the campaign launched by an alliance. Now, you may ask me, Kseniya, what's an alliance? And I have a question. Sorry, I have an answer. Alliance is a collaboration of two or more teams supported by the public statement. And such statements often use bold language, heavy symbolism, and of course, hashtags. And messages about alliances often include hashtags from both participating groups. Here is just an example of a message, very typical one of publicizing an alliance between Team Fearless and Gilan Legion. Such alliances and such publications reinforce mutual recognition and increase visibility of both of the teams. Sometimes entirely new hashtags are created to represent an alliance. We discovered about 600 messages published throughout 2025 regarding alliance creations. One example, as I said, is on the screenshot. But beyond the alliance formation messages, hacktivist alliance-related hashtags most commonly appear in two other kinds of messages. First one is hacktivist statement, and second one is attack report. And let's briefly define these terms. A hacktivist statement is a message where actors outline their motivation and specify preferred targets. An attack report does what the name suggests. It summarizes the impact of already carried out attack. What does it mean for us, cybersecurity teams? This hashtag usage helps to track cross-group collaboration and actors' affiliation. Let's take a closer look at hashtags and their usage. As this distribution of hashtag mentions across 2025 shows, rises and drops of hacktivist activity is often closely related to real-world events. When tensions escalate or new conflicts arise, hacktivists react quickly. They launch new campaigns, they form more alliances and produce more content overall. It's not a secret that hacktivist Telegram channels are often banned. When a group's channel is taken down, their hashtags disappear as well. However, some channels resurrect under the new or old names, and some hashtags from disbanded groups continue to spread with the help of allied groups. Keeping this in mind, we estimated the average lifetime of a hashtag. It was about 2 months. However, that number felt to be distract, so we looked at the full distribution of lifetimes and paid particular attention to popular hashtags. And the hashtag is considered popular once it was mentioned for at least 100 times within the past year and a half. Okay, so what does it say to us? What does it mean to us? This distribution showed that the average lifetime of popular hashtag is almost 4 times longer as distribution of lifetime as average lifetime of normal hashtag. So, just as I said, popular hashtags tend to last nearly 4 times as long. Sorry, this clicker seems to be not working. Is it? Yes, okay. It's me who didn't notice the changes. Okay, so a few slides ago we agreed to label hashtags that initially appeared in 2025 as new. So now let's introduce the new term, quite obvious one. Let's name hashtags as old if their first mention is dated before 2025. And let's take a look at the count of messages posted that contained new and old hashtags throughout 2025. What do we see here? Well, in general, it's quite obvious not that many new hashtags appeared and quite a lot of old ones were used. And the chart seems to be not really interesting till April, when the count of all mentioned hashtags drops sharply at about 73% rate. And what's happened next is even more interesting, and is that in May, old hashtags are mentioned almost twice as much as new ones. We link this to the return of the group ReaperSec, which happened exactly in the beginning of May. And the group was banned 2 months later. So we see that this trend didn't continue in July. And by the way, July has become the first month when the number of new hashtags outnumbered old ones. That means that new hashtags are still created, new groups still appear, and hacktivist threads is still active and quite important. This was continuing until October, when the amount of old and new hashtag mentions was quite equal. But however, in November, the appearance rates of new hashtags dropped sharply. Okay, as to me, I'm waiting for the dates in December just to analyze the events that were most important for hacktivists. How did they react and what did they post about it? So overall, we also paid attention to hashtag lifetimes, and we discovered 10 unique hashtags that were used consistently for at least 18 months. And the top 5 are shown on the slides. The box sizes represent how often these hashtags were mentioned in 2025. So larger box means that it was used more often. They were supposed to be proportional. Well, okay, top 2 of the hashtags are pretty self-explanatory political slogans. The remaining 3 are long-standing hashtags in the hacktivist community, which represent according hacktivist group names. The groups remain active today, and nothing is really interesting except one notable example, and is No Name Group. Their original focus was outside of Middle East region. However, due to close collaboration among allied groups, due to heavy participation in alliances, their hashtags often appear in messages targeting Arab audiences. We're done with hashtags, but to wrap up data analysis, now let's move on to context analysis. We analyzed over 14,000 posts to classify them into the following categories. We already covered hacktivist statements. We already covered alliance formation messages and reports on completed attacks. So let's briefly define the remaining categories, which are upcoming attack warning, alliance or not alliance, promotion, and other. An upcoming attack warning is basically a threat message where hacktivists often specify the next target, which could be a company, government, entity, or entire country. In promotion posts, hacktivists advertise DDoS or other attack services or hosting services. And topics like news, attack summaries, recruitment, and guides, hacking guides basically, were relatively rare, so we decided to group it under other category. And let's discuss reports on completed attacks a bit more details. What does it include? So reports, they were discovered multiple times of multiple attack types that were reported by hacktivists. And this includes DDoS, infrastructure access, doxing, network reveal. For example, this subnet belongs to this company, let's DDoS it. Defacement and data breaches. Also, several attacks were unable to categorize the attack type. For example, example one hacktivist team just attacked this, and it wasn't specified whether it was DDoS attack, defacement, or anything else. So, but anyway, it was quite obvious that that attack was taken, that that attack was reported. So this what lays under uncategorized category. Yes. So we also compiled statistics. Of course, we did. And as analysis shows, completed attack is the most hashtagged content, making up nearly 60% of all messages. The runner-up is hacktivist statements at 90%, 19. And third is upcoming attack warnings, which stands for about 10% of all hashtag content. And looking inside the completed attack category, we discovered that DDoS attacks were the most frequently reported attack type. And defacements, yes, defacements took the second place with the rate of 19%. And the first place, the top 3 leaders, is data breaches. And the rest, few percent, were split between access, network reveal, doxing, and these uncategorized attacks. External links analysis then we performed external links analysis. And this DDoS prevalence trend was supported once again. However, this time 86% of outbound links that were used for malicious purposes reference to services which were used to confirm DDoS attacks. But the gap between 86% and 60%, which was mentioned before, is quite obvious. Why is it so? Well, we link this gap due to the fact that a single DDoS, the single post of DDoS attack report quite often mentions several victims. So, for example, we, Hacktivist Group 1, we just attacked this, that, and that. And they share several links in the same publication. Okay, so the gap is explained, it's all right. But we see from different sources that DDoS is considered to be the most common and most frequently reported tactic that hacktivists use. We also analyzed social media links that were mentioned in their publications. And once again, it was confirmed that Telegram was the most referenced platform among other social media. And it represented 88%. And yes, Telegram turned out to be the primary coordination hub, as you can see on the slide. About 9% of the links linked to Twitter, and the remaining 3% were split across other platforms. You can see all of them on the slide. That last group includes link to the news article. For example, hacktivists really enjoy news about themselves and refer them from time to time, and few links to compromised accounts, and links to additional communication channels that are run by the same group. For example, a hacktivist group main channel is Telegram, but they also do have a Twitter, also known as X account, so they mention it. Congratulations! We're almost at the final section. And if you've been tracking the story, you may already have some insights. If no, don't worry, I'm all here to present the key insights. First, timing matters. Once hacktivists issue a threat, they typically refer for operation planned for the near future, typically within the same week or even few days. This makes early detection of such warning so valuable for proactive defense. Second, hacktivist activity often mirrors real-time changes, real-world changes. Groups mobilize quickly and measure events as ways to gain attention and to justify their attacks. Third, Telegram dominates communication. It accounts for 88%, as we already mentioned, of social media references in discovered hashtag content. 4, DDoS remains the preferred attack method. Hacktivists choose large scale and quantity over quality. 5th, hashtags are strategic markers. They help to identify groups and signal on their position, often in political or religious contexts. And finally, yet unfortunately, targets are global. They're not limited to Middle East region. Hacktivists report attacks targeting all countries from all around the globe, including Americas, Europe, Asia, and even Australia. That's why, as dark web expert, I recommend not underestimating hacktivist threats, even if your business is outside of Middle East. Countering hacktivism requires a proactive, multi-layer defense. So, what should you do in practice? I would start with the basics. Prioritize rapid threat detection and incident response. I also recommend implementing anti-DDoS protection along with continuous monitoring of the dark web. The earlier you identify a potential threat, the more time you have to patch vulnerabilities, apply protection measures, mitigation measures, and alert stakeholders. To study more on topic, I highly encourage you to visit the link on the last slide and check out on the original research. I'm looking forward to your questions. Please drop in the chat. Okay, the first question is, are your findings belong to the surface or the dark web? Quite a nice question. And we analyzed data from the surface, deep and dark webs. Yet the data mostly was retrieved from the deep web. What it is, it's basically data that belong to the surface web. Well, it's open source, yet you have to know the exact places to search for it. So I hope that answered the question. Next question is, why the data differ in reports and webinar? Well, as I already mentioned, the data for the webinar was updated. So that's why it may differ. It's not differ for the previous dates from January to July, but it's updated from August till November. How hashtag lifetime was calculated? Thank you for the question. The hashtag lifetime was based on the data retrieved from the past 18 months. And we calculated the date, the month of initial appearance, and the date of the last mention, and just basically just distracted one from another. So, for example, if the first mention from is dated by January and the last mention dated by June 2025, the hashtag lifetime is 6 months. How has the use of hashtags and social platforms changed the speed and scale at which hacktivist campaigns can mobilize across regions? I cannot answer to that question in terms of number, as we didn't calculate them directly. But as to me, who was involved into this topic for the past 6 months, hashtags more typically used for a bit different reasons, to group people, to ally them all together, to demonstrate the power, to show, to outline motivation behind the team, and to show attribution. For example, we team this, and we Alliance 1 don't want to include Team X to our alliance anymore. How do you separate real hacktivist activity from noise and online posturing in your data? Well, the data was collected directly from the hacktivist channels. So we only included posts that contained the exact hacktivist hashtags. Few of them I already mentioned on the slide. So if answering for this particular research, we only taken already clean data. How can organizations use digital footprint intelligence to spot hacktivist threats earlier? Well, digital footprint intelligence is a service that allows continuous dark web monitoring. Not just dark web, but as I mentioned, surface, deep, and dark webs. We process it on a daily manner with giant numbers of data analyzed. So, and we also report on the findings as early as possible. We report on this daily, and customers receive daily notifications on the most critical vulnerabilities found or mentions. I don't see any questions. But then I think that's it for today. Thank you for attending. Thank you for your attention. Have a nice day and stay safe.